Excuse me, sir. Did you just cite an ability gap between Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton and George Russell of Kingsley and Norfolk?
Tell me he's not. Tell me he's getting the most out of that car.
This is incredible, Shez. That's that. Hold on. I can hear that blasphemy door opening again. This is.
Fred Vasseur is already saying we will see Mercedes join us by the end of this year. That's what I've got to say on Mercedes.
Is that what he said, Baxley? What I heard from Frederick Vasseur when asked whether Mercedes are catching them was they're 28 seconds behind us, mate.
Yeah, he did say
so
that.
So of course they're catching.
No.
Should we talk about Mercedes, Baxley?
Yeah.
Go on.
I've got a lot to say about Mercedes, and I've got a few minutes in which to do it. So,
let's go.
Yeah.
One word answers only, please. Shazini, I'm coming to you first. Is it time for Toto, the boy who cried wolf, to bow out of team principal at Mercedes, though? Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shakedown podcast. With me, as always, in perpetuity, my brothers, my friends, my brethren, co-hosts, Chezinho and Sir Baxley. How are we doing, chaps? It doesn't matter how you are doing. How very dare you take the bait, as always, because we've got to talk to some F1age today. Post the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, chaps. There are many plot lines. Baxley, Sir Baxley, I'm coming to you first. Of those many plot lines, which is the biggest to come out of the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix?
McLaren are back. Are they? I mean, look, the race was not a classic. It was a slow build, slow burner where we've kind of seen it a couple of times over the last couple of years where somebody all of a sudden finds some pace in the last 10 laps and then threatens to steal a win and then doesn't because they either make a mistake or they just can't quite get close enough to Max. But McLaren's pace this weekend was for real. Look, Red Bull, they made some mistakes with setup, and I mean, you hear the stories of Sebastian Buemi and Jake Dennis being locked in the sim for hours on end to try and work out the issues, and Max did an amazing job this weekend. Wonderful pole position, even with the tow, it was still a great pole position. And then his first stint in particular was unbelievable. But McLaren, they are there, and Oscar Piastri, bar a penalty, I think would have been right up on Max's gearbox. I think he's becoming the real deal very, very quickly. Is this young chap? He's very, very impressive, and we might not have a driver's title fight this year, but if Checo Perez keeps going the way he's going, we might have a constructors fight. We might just have a constructors fight. Still back Red Bull to win it, but yeah, I'm sure we'll get to Checo in short order, but he was crap.
Oof. When is he not CRAP, Baxley? This is the question that we want to ask. Shez, do you agree or disagree with Baxley that McLaren are back? Because the only reason why I ask you that is because my most recent conversation with legend of F1 Peter D. Windsor, he intimated that having conversations with people that are close to the paddock, that potentially they didn't buy what Max Verstappen and Red Bull were selling, that they were sandbagging, and it was all fugazi, making it more interesting than it really was. What do you reckon, Shez?
I disagree with that. I don't often disagree with Peter Windsor. You know that, but this was a race where from Friday, Red Bull just looked like they were on back foot. Like there was never a moment within that where anything, not just what you could see on track, but anything that was coming out of the team seemed anything less than genuine. There was always a sense that we're struggling, and even the lap that Max pulled out of the bag for pole, there was a caveat to that as well, right? You couldn't clearly ever say at any point the car is what's giving him the position right now. It was Max doing it. If you're going to ask me the question about what the biggest story was of the weekend, it was the fact that for the first weekend in 2-3 seasons now, Max was the guy that genuinely, verifiably made the difference.
Oof.
And that's how for me, I know that it wasn't Red Bull sandbagging. Like the emotion that you heard on the radio when Max went over the line, and the celebrations he had with the team and the interview he gave afterwards, like when he gave his interview after qualifying, he was visibly shaking with adrenaline, right? That doesn't happen if you're sandbagging. That was for real. So yeah, for me, I don't buy the sandbagging, and actually that I think is slightly insulting to the job that Max Verstappen did over the weekend, and I think it would be remiss of us to not recognise that.
He wasn't bad again, was he, one Max Verstappen? I'm getting a bit tired of waxing lyrical about this fella. And again, I think we saw a different side of the chap. You can talk all you want to about his racecraft and his racing IQ, but it's something different, right? When you have that ability to rise above that adversity, even face down the adversity and get it done in the clutchest of clutch times. And he keeps... Oh, what else do we say, Baxter, about this fella at this point? He keeps doing it, right? Like I've long run out of superlatives when it comes to the three soon to be 4-time champ Baxter. What did you make of that qualifying lap, bro?
It was a great lap, don't get me wrong. I mean, it was one of his best. We know that Max does sometimes make mistakes in qualifying, and I know he's had 8 poles in a row now, which equals Senna's record, which obviously at Imola carries a lot of weight with it. And yes, he did get that toe from Hulkenberg at the start of the lap, but it was still what you would expect from Max. Picture perfect execution under the highest pressure. That we saw in Monaco last year, which I maintain was still a better lap for the way that he pulled that back in the last sector. He had to do that. That he was pushed to that limit, and that's where the greatness really shows, when a driver is pushed to their limit and they find that extra level. We've seen Lewis do it. We've seen Michael, Ayrton, Seb on occasion, and certainly in qualifying. When they're absolutely at their limit, they can find that extra gear that not many other people have, and he showed that. He showed that it was an incredible performance, and he only needed a few hundredths, and that's what he did.
Shez, who's going to beat that fella? Who on the grid currently is going to be able to nail Max Verstappen in the short to medium term? Because for the longest time, as far as the competitive landscape's concerned, I am preoccupied, perturbed even, because I feel like Max Verstappen in that form, in his final form, presents all of the other 19 with a problem, a Rubik's Cube, as far as racing, that I'm not sure that they have the requisite skill, mettle or resilience to solve for. Who can do it, Shaz?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, isn't it? Like I think I've always kind of maintained that a driver learns how to really hone their craft in the times when they're not being challenged, and then they can deploy all the stuff they've learned when they are being challenged. And that's what I saw Max do this weekend. It was no longer him trying to go for perfection. It was him trying to get the result and just doing what needed to be done to do that. And he had the requisite skills in his locker to make that happen. And that's what makes this scary, right? That he was already pretty formidable even when we went into sort of 2022, 2023, and 2024. To see what he's going to look like when he's faced with the challenge coming out the other side of that, it's really difficult to see who's got the requisite skills to beat him, even if they have equal cars. Look, I'll be honest with you right now. I don't think Lando's that guy. Like I think he.
Oof, how very day.
Yeah, I know. I think when he's got a car underneath him, like he had this weekend, he can show the potential that he has within him. But sometimes I feel like the potential that he has within him isn't quite there yet to be able to overcome Max. He might be able to draw level on occasion, but not to a point that he can overtake him. Maybe there are the drivers in other positions. I think Oscar, if he hadn't had that 3-place grid penalty, or if he had actually got pole and then got a 3-place grid penalty, I think would have been in a better position to show what he could actually do. So Oscar is definitely a contender. And as usual, my favourite Charles Leclerc is going to be in there somewhere.
When you say Charles Leclerc, you mean modern day Jean Alesi.
No, I don't. I do not agree with that at all.
Giving me
Just going to put that in there now.
Chazinho, this chap. Did you see he's off? I don't even want to talk about the fella, actually. At the moment, we're having a greatness conversation. And when you see that fella, still, okay, it was a good drive from him this weekend, right? But again, another bloody off. Shez, another.
That's the quickest way across that chicane.
Yeah, of course it is. Because we're playing F1 24, the game, and not real F1, isn't it? It's Shez. I'm gonna leave him alone for this episode,
okay.
But I still think he's worthy of criticism, notwithstanding the decent drive. Another race weekend comes and goes. Charles Leclerc makes an unforced error. True or false? What are we doing? But I digress. Go on, let's get back to the greatness conversation and leave Charles Leclerc out of it. Listen, Lando, I love Lando. I think Lando's becoming, chaps, those final the one knock on Lando is that he also made mistakes, right? Penultimate stages of the Grand Prix, cheeky oversteer correction. You could argue that he might well have gotten DRS before the end of the race. I think it's a reach to argue that he would have gotten around Max Verstappen in one lap or less. I think he would have needed a good few. In the words of the immortal Murray Walker, catching is one thing and passing is completely something else. I think he would have struggled, but he's Baxter. Is he not? Don't you see Lando currently pegging back his shoulders and growing into himself as a potentially championship winning F1 driver?
Yeah, he's starting to do what Max did for a couple of years, sort of 2019-20, where he really began to be like, look, when I get a car, I'm going to be right there. And that's what he did in 2021. And I think Lando's starting to do that now. He's never had a car capable of winning races regularly. He had it briefly in 2021, and we all saw what happened in Sochi. But he is just maturing with every single race he does, and he would have learned from that. And yeah, he understood that the race was lost really in the first stint. They just didn't have the pace. For some reason, that Red Bull is just not happy on harder tyres. You know, softer tyres, they're happy, they're quick. But on the harder tyres in the last two races, they've really struggled with I don't quite know. They've just not had any pace. I mean, you know, I know Max had floor damage in Miami, but yeah, Lando's definitely getting there. And I think the win, when you get a win, it really unlocks you and you get the confidence because you're like, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I saw that from Charles Leclerc when he got his first win. It was like, yeah, got that done. I can move forward now. Lewis was the same. You know, he got even better in 2007 after he got the win. You know, Max was the same. Daniel Ricciardo was the same. When they get that first win, you feel like you belong and you can start elevating your performance, particularly if you've got a car capable of allowing you to do that. And, you know, we're coming up to an important part of the season, and I can see Lando getting one or two wins. Not every race. I don't think he's going to go and dominate July or something like Lewis used to do when he would win 4 races in a month or something, and go into unbeatable settings back in the dominance days. But I give him a chance, and I think he'll get the job done.
Oof, he's hoping. Go on then, Shez. Let me pitch this at you the same way that I pitched it at P. Windsor. Peter said that Lando Norris is the number one driver at McLaren. But should he be?
Thank you for that question. I guess, look, Oscar is the big elephant in the room. Like he was probably the quicker McLaren driver over the course of the Miami Grand Prix weekend, despite having an upgrade that was only half of what Lando had. And then this weekend, again, he was the quicker driver with the upgrade. It was hundredths of a second, but it was quicker. And without that penalty, I think things would have been different. You could argue maybe he didn't perform quite as well as he should have done, managing the tires in the second stint, but he took a massive amount out of the hard tires on that outlap to get ahead of Carlos Sainz to make the undercut work. and then was managing a set of tyres that were damaged for the rest of that stint. He was hobbled because the team had asked him to do something. So for me, Lando is as yet like completely fully not proven. Like there's still caveats to his performances over the last couple of weekends, and I really want to see when Oscar is fully firing, doesn't have any of the excuses that I've just given now as to why he wasn't further ahead. Is Lando still the driver that is ahead? Ostensibly, he is the number one driver. He was given all of the upgrades in Miami. McLaren clearly see him as the guy that they're going to put their weight behind, and that is understandable. He's got tenure there, hasn't he? He's been there longer. He's got the contract with the team, but Oscar's going to start asking him some questions if he hasn't already, and I'm not sure that Lando's got all the answers.
Oh, let's go, Shez. I don't think he's got all the answers either. And hitherto, erstwhile, you guys have heard me. I was convinced that Lando Norris would step it up a gear in perpetuity and always have something in hand for Oscar Piastri after this weekend's Grand Prix and qualifying in particular. You know what, chaps? I'm not so sure. I think sometimes in F1 you have these coming out moments, becoming moments that fly underneath the radar, right? And I don't want to be a noddy F1 fan. Just because Oscar didn't start that Grand Prix from pole, I'm not going to miss the significance of that lap, and that notwithstanding Max Verstappen's cheeky toe from Nico Hulkenberg, Oscar Piastri might just have outqualified one of the fastest F1 drivers in one of the most dominant cars that we have ever seen in F1 history. And that, chap, surely has to be significant for Oscar Piastri as far as his line of travel in his bloody sophomore season. Put some respect on his name, surely, Baxter.
Yes,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, he's doing a phenomenal job. I see a lot of similarities actually between this partnership, Norris and Piastri, and Verstappen and Ricciardo. When I know Max made his debut and won, and it's very different, but Max still needed time to develop, whereas Ricciardo was the established driver, been there for a few years, had the tenure, and eventually just little by little, Max just hauled him in, got quicker, got better and better, and took that team over. Now, whether Oscar can do that, I don't know. It depends on how things go. We can't predict the future, but it's always like Daniel Ricciardo is the number one driver, but there's this other guy in the background who's pretty handy, and eventually became the guy that we know now. Could Oscar do that? I think he's got the potential. His junior career was outstanding, one of the best that we've ever seen. I think he's got to sort out his tyre management. I think there's a couple of drivers who have that potential, a la George Russell and Oscar Piastri. And I think Lando had that to an extent, but he's getting better with it. He's just managing those tyres and managing their racecraft. Because if you're going to be a world champion and you're going up against one of the best in the business in Max Verstappen, you've got to be so consistent in every single facet of your game. I always like to use this observation is that 2014 was a watershed moment for the sport because you had Lewis who had the raw speed over Nico, but Nico had the consistency. So in order to beat Nico, Lewis had to up his game and become more and more consistent. He lost that championship in 2016 because of poor consistency. So he went, right, I need to step up my game. So he then got better, which Vettel tried to live with him and couldn't. And then Max Verstappen was like, okay, Lewis, I see you. I'm going to challenge you. And then Max has kind of gone to Lewis's level. And okay, like Lewis peaked, I think, higher than Max has got to at the moment. Max is still going up. And they kind of caught each other at a nice crossroads. That's when 2021 happened. And then Max is now kind of going up, and Lewis is still operating at a very high level, but Lewis set the bar and Max has had to raise himself to get to that bar, and now other drivers have got to go above what Max is setting, which is very hard to do.
Baxty, excuse me, sir. Did you just say that Lewis has peaked?
Yeah, of course he has. He's in his 40s. I mean, he's
not.
I mean, he's still. Well, he's nearly in his 40s. I mean, he's. I mean, look, his like 95% is still better than 3/4 of the grid. Yeah, I mean, look at Fernando Alonso, for God's sake. The guy is still operating at a top level and destroying younger drivers. I mean, okay, Lance Stroll's his teammate, so it's not a high
Not
bar to
this
clear.
weekend, he
But
didn't.
well, okay, he had an off weekend this weekend, but Lewis is still showing that he's still got it, and when he's got a machine capable of doing good things, he can still get results. It's just Mercedes haven't given him that machinery over the last few years, and hopefully Ferrari can give him that machinery next year, and we can see, because he's lost half a yard of pace in qualifying. He definitely has. His qualifying is not as good as it used to be.
Sir Baxty.
And I think even the most diehard Coulter will go, yeah, okay, his qualifying is not where it used to be, but his racecraft is still there.
Oof.
I mean, when you got Stefano Domenicali, the guy that fought Lewis right at the start of his career, was part of the team that wanted to take him down at Ferrari, going, he's lost nothing. That shows you how good that guy still is. But he's not as, when you think of Lewis circa 2017, 2018, that was like God tier levels.
I think.
And 2017 to 2020, I'll expand it a little bit.
Did somebody just open the techie door, Sir Baxley? This is Shares, agree or disagree? Has Lewis Hamilton peaked as at May 24?
No, I still think that I don't see any major evidence that he's absolutely hit the mountain, the top of the mountain. There's nowhere for him to go. There's no peak that he can rise above. And if I believed that, then I would also believe that there's absolutely zero chance that, given the car and the opportunity, that he could actually beat Max Verstappen. And I do think he could, because I think that there is still a level that he needs to get to be able to do that. I just don't think I've seen it yet. Where you say that he's lost a yard of pace in qualifying, I think that does George Russell a disservice. I think George is just that quick over one lap. And
I'm not saying George isn't quick. Yeah.
I think we are definitely downplaying how good Russell is over one lap.
Hang on,
and Lewis is still.
Yeah. This is chaos, bruv. I've got to step in here. With that's thing what you've just said there. He's doing Lewis Hamilton a disservice. There is no way, Jose, that Lewis at his best gets out-qualified as much as he's getting out-qualified today by George Russell. No way. I'm not having it. I think that's proven. No, George is very quick. Don't get it twisted.
Wasn't he on the wrong end of the qualifying head-to-head in 2014? I think he was.
He was, yeah, he was, yeah.
So qualifying isn't necessarily his bag. So to be within a tenth pretty much every qualifying session of someone I think is massively underrated in terms of their out and out speed I think that shows Lewis working at a pretty top level.
So the one caveat I would say is that obviously Lewis has been, in early part of the season, was running those experiments, which obviously did affect his performance. I mean, we saw it in China. It was just ridiculous what he did. But he's been experimenting with the setups to try and find a silver bullet of performance. But
even when he's not experimenting, he's still on the bad end of the less than a tenth qualifying difference, isn't he? In Miami and Imola, he wasn't. By his own admission, he said the car felt good. We were able to go down a trajectory. I wasn't needing to experiment, and he was on the wrong end of the qualifying head-to-head, wasn't he?
You know what, Shez? I can't. I've got to defend Sir Lewis Carl Davidson.
What's there to defend? I haven't attacked him.
I think you have, though, subtly. Here's what you're doing, Shez. You're doing him a disservice, right, by talking about. Listen, there's two things. In fact, three things. You need Sir Lewis at his peak first, as far as his age and his trajectory. You need him to have a decent car, and you also need him to be dialed in right. I would say 2013, 2014, 15. I would argue that Lewis wasn't necessarily as dialed in as you would ever see him, right? When you get those three things, though, I would argue that even to out-qualify, I know you're going to say that qualifying has never been his bag, but this is a relative story, right? I'm saying to you that George Russell, with all of those three things dialed in, that to Lewis Hamilton. Okay, so George would take one or two off him a seat. Like, he wouldn't out-qualify him all the time. Like, that's not Lewis's bag. But to be out-qualified, what are we looking at head-to-head now, right? It's been like every single, like even going back into last bloody season. That's what I'm saying. As far as to say that Lewis is still at his prime in 2024, mate of, is doing that fella in his prime a massive disservice, Shez. Humongous.
Apples and oranges. Completely apples and oranges. Because the car that he's got right now is not the car that he had in 2017, 18, 19, 20. You know, that car was the car that talked to him, that was head and shoulders above. I'm not going to say it was head and shoulders above other cars on the grid, because it wasn't. 17 and 18, the Ferrari was on balance probably equal, if not a bit quicker. But he was able to talk to that car, and it was able to talk back to him in a way that this car is not able to do. And I think that is the challenge. That's the little bit that Lewis still needs, is to be able to unlock godlike performance in a car that doesn't talk to him. And that's what George, I think, right now does do better. And that's the gap. That's the ability gap that I think will, if he bridges that, that's him at his peak. That's the extra little bit. And it's in front of him. He can see it. That's what he needs to do. Whether or not he needs to do it when the car is actually singing and talking to him. So if he's in a Ferrari next season and the SF25 or, you know, Mondial or whatever they're going to call it next year, because they have no sane naming system in
SFLH 44. Welcome to Ferrari, Lewis.
If that car is able to talk to him the way that the dominant Mercs did, then this question becomes moot. He goes back to that again, and those questions stop. But if it doesn't, and he's still able to get a tune out of it, that tells me that he's made progress.
Excuse me, sir. Did you just cite an ability gap between Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton and George Russell of Kingsley in Norfolk?
Tell me he's getting the most out of that car.
This is incredible, Shez. That's that. Hold on. I can hear that blasphemy door opening again. This is chaos, bro. You might be. There's an element of truth to what you're saying, Shez, but your most recent point contradicts your first. Like, surely, then, if there is ability gap between Lewis and George in May of 24, then that's proof positive yet again that Lewis isn't in his prime, that he's long past it. But whatever, man, I digress. This is too blasphemous for me, Shez. It's far too late. So should we talk? You know what? Should we talk about Mercedes, Baxty?
Yeah.
Go on.
I've got a lot to say about Mercedes, and I've got a few minutes in which to do it. So,
let's go.
Yeah.
Go on, Baxty, because the word on the curb is that Mercedes. There's two sides of this story, right? Some are saying that Mercedes let themselves down yet again. Some are saying that they delivered on a promise and that they brought upgrades that had materially improved their car. On which side of that fence do you sit, Sir Baxty?
I think to all our loyal viewers, they'll be unsurprised to hear that I'm going to be positive about Mercedes. Yeah, look, the car was definitely improved, and I think one thing that you could kind of glean from what Toto Wolff, James Allison, and Andrew Shovlin were saying was that they were kind of intimating that the correlation issues seem to have been ironed out, which if they have done that, that's fantastic. And the car didn't have too many snaps, or, you know, it was stable. It's a stable platform, and they seem to have finally got on top of this concept, which they can now then start putting more aggressive updates onto the car, which rumored to be coming in Canada, so we'll be keeping a close eye on that. But what I want to say is this: is I've got so many, you know, Mercedes fans, Lewis fans going, oh, but look at McLaren, they made all this improvement really quickly and they just don't understand the regs and blah blah. You are fundamentally misunderstanding how McLaren got to where they are. McLaren changed their concept in France 2022. They've been working on this concept for 2 years. They made a mistake which put them at the back last year. They were open and honest about that when they launched that 2023 car. They said, we're going to be crap. They took a load of pain. And then when they put the upgrade on the car to fix those issues, they were at the front of the grid. They were up there with fighting, not quite fighting Red Bull, but they were up there with Ferrari and Aston Martin. Whereas Mercedes, look, I don't blame them for this. They want to race with the zero side pod, so therefore they stuck with that concept. That was the biggest mistake that they made, was sticking with that zero side pod. But it's understandable because, we want to race. This shows that there's potential in this. It's going to work. It's human nature. But then they got to Bahrain testing last year and they were like, okay, yeah, this ain't working. This ain't the one. And they then realized, we can't really change our concept because we've homologated a chassis and we can't homologate another one because of the cost cap. So we have to go with a mule car. And they basically sacked off last year and still finished second in the constructors, which was an amazing achievement. So they kind of half got the concept on the car last year. They've gone full this year with the concept. Unsurprisingly, they're not as quick as the other teams that have had the concept on the car for a year, 2 years, Red Bull, 3 years. So it's taking them time. And they've had some issues with correlation. Okay, fine. And the results, people say, well, hang on, they improved the car, but they're still 6th and 7th. Yeah, that's because McLaren fully upgraded both of their cars. Ferrari brought upgrades, which seem to work, but this track, Imola, maybe doesn't suit them as well as other tracks will down the line. Red Bull have bought upgrades, so they're still making progress forward. So the small progress that Mercedes made isn't actually shown because of the fact that you've got other teams continuing to make improvements. But if Mercedes go with this aggressive upgrade strategy and it works, they're going to catch up. Fred Vasseur is already saying we will see Mercedes join us by the end of this year. That's what I've got to say on Mercedes.
Is that what he said, Baxley? What I heard from Frederick Vasseur when asked whether Mercedes are catching them was they're 28 seconds behind us, mate.
Yeah, he did say
so
that.
Of course they're catching.
No. He was taking the mickey, he was having a joke because that's just what Fred does. But he has also said that, in more serious terms, that Mercedes are going to catch, that they're expecting them to catch. Look, this team hasn't forgotten how to win. They just got the regs wrong and they made a massive mistake, and it's taken them this long to rectify it. And hopefully by the end of this year, we will see them making a lot of progress forward and getting closer to your Ferraris and your McLarens, and hopefully make a challenge to Red Bull maybe in 25. I'm not sure about 12. I don't know. I can't call 25, but get on top of the regs now, stick a overcharged engine in that car. OP engine in that car in 26. If, of course, they can drive it in a straight line, which obviously is.
Shez, talk to me about Mercedes quickly, because I'm guessing that your and Baxley's opinions might diverge at this point.
Mercedes to me are like that person that goes to the self-help group and finally has said, "Hi, I'm Mercedes and I'm slow." Finally they've actually sort of agreed. My issue with them is that what they've said this weekend, we finally understand and we're going in the right direction. The correlation is fully there and we're going to start making some progress, is a carbon copy of what I heard them say at points last season as well. Now we're just going to have to add downforce and it's going to come. I need to see the proof, man. I need to see the proof of the pudding rather than just the hyperbole that comes out of Brackley every time they make a minor little breakthrough or they have a moment of understanding. There needs to be consistent progress towards the front. And yeah, maybe this is the time. I don't know. But unfortunately, despite, and I've heard it from reputable sources in the press, I've heard it from Allison, like, a lot, and I've heard it from Toto as well, that we're on the right track. We've got a big upgrade coming in Canada. It's just gonna be about adding performance now. My problem is that I've heard it so many bloody times, and fool me once, what I don't even know this they're saying, but I'm not gonna be drawn in every single time they say this until I actually see them consistently making the kind of strides forward that McLaren have done over the past couple of seasons, and that Ferrari are consistently showing now, I just don't believe it.
I don't think I believe it either. Go on, Baxty.
Well, look, as I said in my little ramble, is that Mercedes' biggest problem was they stuck with the zero pod. They should never have stuck with it, but that's hindsight talking. Because they won a race, so they thought, oh yeah, this is going to work, and then they very quickly realised, oh okay, yeah, fine, we're screwed, and they got stuck with the mule car. Like let's not, they said we've fixed our problems. Mercedes couldn't put their full concept on the car last year because of the chassis issue and the cost cap.
But my problem is that they've come in this season with what an upgrade that should have put them, like, they did everything they said that they thought they were going to do. It wasn't like McLaren, where McLaren said we've made a massive mistake and the upgrades that we're bringing are gonna shoot us forward. McLaren, when they brought that upgrade, were where they should have been at the beginning of that season. Mercedes were where they thought they should be at the beginning of this season. They had the car they thought they had, and it wasn't good enough. And they still didn't properly understand it. So that's why you have to excuse me a little bit that even at this point, when they tell me, oh, we've understood it, well, unless you show me the evidence that you're consistently doing that, I'm sorry, I cannot believe you.
But they're 5 months into a concept change. If we're being honest here, 5 months. McLaren are nearly 2 years into it. That's how far behind Mercedes are.
But when McLaren brought their upgrade in Silverstone, they're immediately that much quicker. Immediately.
I'm not talking about last year. I'm talking about when they changed the concept in France in 22. That's how long it's taken them to get. It's taken them 2 years. Mercedes are having,
but they had a massive mistake in the middle of that, which is why James Key ended up having to go.
Yeah, of course, they made the mistake.
They had a proper personnel issue. James Key was leading them down a route that he shouldn't have taken them, and it took that. It took the technical team a huge amount of time at the beginning of 2023 to unravel that, and then put an upgrade on that was able to do the business.
I agree with you, yes. However, they would have seen the performance that Aston Martin had, because both them and Aston Martin basically sacked off 22 in order to make progress in 23. And they would have seen where Aston Martin were and went, yeah, you know what? We know we're on the right track. We just made a mistake. They rectify that mistake and they instantly get to where they should be. Mercedes had a different concept that they thought was going to work. And then they realised we have reached the limit of this and they can't go any further. But the reason why they stuck with it was because they thought, oh, well, we can win with this because we have won a race with this. Natural human instinct to pursue that path. But they then couldn't fully change it because of the cost cap. Which hampered
I don't disagree with you. I've argued on this platform more than once that I think that what Mercedes did at the beginning of 2023 was justified. I get it. I absolutely get it. No, even if it was a mistake, I get it.
No, just shows it wasn't justified though. No, especially not with the benefit of hindsight. Look,
but you don't have hindsight when you're making a decision.
True. Right, fine. But if people so here's my issue with Mercedes. At the moment, it looks fantastic, right? But and still, that car, that W15, per Ted Kravitz, is slower than slow things. Anybody can build a car that's nice and easy to drive, right? Driving Miss Daisy settings, but isn't bloody quick, right? And that's where we are for me. Not that they haven't made progress, Braxton. You're admirable in your ability, in your loyalty, even to the Mercedes course. However, 2022, 2023 were back-to-back critical errors. Everything that they're suffering from now is a function of some poor low-level decision-making that they took towards the end of 2022 to 2023. Why roll forward that bloody car on the back of one victory? Is that course sufficient? Listen, very simple risk to reward calc there. Again, take a step back, touch some grass, see the wood for the trees, surely. There is too much at risk if you get this wrong and roll forward that bloody zero pod concept with its narrow, inaccessible peak performance curve to where you're going to end up, like you said, Baxter, with a mule car for another 12 months, right? The stop loss should have been set operationally higher than it was. And now all of the stuff that they're coming out with exacerbates it, right? The bloody PR tweeting out all this stuff. Don't love me at my worst, then you don't deserve to love me at my best. Toto Wolff and James Allison contradicting each other as far as the ineptitude of the physics of the car. Like, it's just, it looks like the inmates are running the asylum. And to Shez's point, I how can I believe a Toto Wolff when he's been recycling the same bloody soundbite now for the best part of 24 months? In fact, it's not lost on me, the irony that his surname is Wolff, the boy who cried. That's what we're dealing with at the moment as far as Mercedes. Now, what else would I expect him to say as a team principal and a PR man? Then that's the other side of the coin, right? But as an ingester of Formula One, the lens through which I watch the sport, I've got to call it as I see it, right? That these guys have become unreliable narrators, that they're rap sheet as far as the porkies that they've been telling, and how frequently history has made mugs of them is, I don't know, I can't make the case for Baxley. Like, what are we doing?
I will quickly just say this because I know we're running out of time. Is there have been consequences to these mistakes. Mike Elliott got shifted upwards and then left. Loic Serra basically walked out. From what I understand, he was not happy with what happened, and that's why he's going to Ferrari. It's why he left last year, because he's been on gardening leave since last year. So there are consequences to this, and that when you make a mistake, that's what happens. You're going to have to deal with that. They're losing their prized asset in Lewis and everything else, but this is seemingly. They are 5 months into a concept. They seem to have got the gremlins out, which obviously they should have been doing in 2022. They're having to do it now. They now have to bridge that gap in double quick time. If they can't do that, then that's when we start to have serious conversations like, okay, something's really not right here, because you've got the concept you want on the car. You've worked out the correlation issues. You're putting these aggressive upgrades on the car. Why are they still not bridging the gap? They were very open about the fact that the other teams made more improvement this weekend because they've got bigger upgrades, a la McLaren, a la Ferrari, a la Red Bull. They've put these upgrades on the car. Come Canada, Mercedes hopefully should, we know it takes a race to get going. I've still got faith that they can get it right, seeing as they've got the concept they really want on the car. If we don't see the results around Canada in the following Grand Prix, then we can start having this conversation of they don't know what they're doing. But there's been a lot. They're still unpicking the mistakes of 2 years ago.
Oh, Baxty, this is very techie. Lastly, finally, chaps, one word answers only, please. Shazini, I'm coming to you first. Is it time for Toto, the boy who cried wolf, to bow out of team principal at Mercedes then?
No.
Baxty, what say you, sir?
No.
Absolutely not. I don't disagree. I really want to disagree with you, but I don't disagree. You've got to put some respect on Toto Wolff's name, even though on so many occasions this season I have not. But I digress. Guys, super conversation as always. For co-hosts Shazinho, for Sir Baxty, I've been Cameron F1. Do me a favour, like, comment and subscribe if you're watching on the tubes. If you're listening on a podcasting platform, follow and cinco estrellas, por favor. As always, between now and next time, remember to look but never stare.